Good afternoon, everyone, or I should say good evening. I think we're sort of in between 6 o'clock. Welcome to the virtual town hall to study and look at the Center Street project, which has been named Center Stage, and a very exciting plan and study that we've embarked here in the MPO, and explain what that is. For those that don't know what the MPO is, MTPO is a Metropolitan Transportation Planning Organization. Long name, takes a couple of breaths to say that, but basically what we do here in Kingsport is a multi-jurisdictional agency, is funded by Federal Highway, Federal Transit. And we look at transportation issues and problems throughout the area and come up with ideas to solve those problems and do some background information such as traffic counts and crash records and accessibility, things like that. So that's what the MPO does. And our staff, by the way, is, of course, with Bill Albright. I didn't introduce myself, I don't think. Leslie Phillips, Susan Doran, and Mike Thompson. That's the staff of MPO. And we have hired, or I should say TDOT has hired, a consulting firm to help us with the Center Street project. And it's Kimberly Horn out of Nashville and Knoxville. And they're represented by Kevin Tilbury, Rachel Robinson, Winston Mitchell, Laura Kelly, and Terrence Hill. So I've got everybody included there. And we just appreciate everybody being on board tonight. I look forward to your comments and your questions. As a matter of fact, we want to start off with a couple of questions of our own to ask the folks out there to get things started. And then we're going to turn it over to Leslie Phillips, who's going to give us some details on the study along with other folks that are here on our panel. First question we've got is, we're polling the audience here, so to speak. How often do you use East Center Street as a means of travel? And that is from East Sullivan to Fort Henry Drive. Keep that in mind. We're not talking about the core downtown area of western part of Center Street near Domtar. It's the East Center Street area from Sullivan Street to Fort Henry Drive, which is where the Catholic school is. And so again, I'll repeat, how often do you use East Center Street as a means of travel from East Sullivan Street to Fort Henry Drive to or from downtown Kingsport? And you should have a questionnaire there to fill in. Give you a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds on that, a few moments. Guys, I don't know exactly what you have planned for that, Rachel, or we're going to show the results now or later.
So we can show the results. I'll show those now.
Okay. Okay, that's good. That's real good. 70% looks like close. 75% use it a lot. So that's good. Okay, question number 2. And again, on the poll is, how often do you frequent businesses along East Center Street? Again, from the same segment from East Sullivan to Fort Henry Drive. Again, how often do you frequent businesses along East Center Street? And let me just say this, that some of those businesses have been there a long time. And really Center Street is kind of one of these old corridors, a main drag that has had business there for many, many years. And have some new ones as well. But that's the question, is how often do you frequent these businesses?
I will end this poll now too and show you guys the results.
All right, it looks like nearly half do not frequent Center Street businesses, do not patronize their business, about half at 43%. And it's an interesting number. So I won't go any further. I don't want to cut into Leslie's discussion, but that's good response there. And I'm going to let Leslie take it from here. I do want to mention that after we're done with the presentations and discussion, there'll be a Q&A session at the end. So there'll be plenty of time for folks to ask questions and have some discussion there beyond what we're going to do here momentarily. So Leslie, I'll let you pick that up and run with it.
Thanks, Bill. This is being recorded, so it will be posted on the project website or the city's YouTube channel as well, so you can go back and view it later. And there is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. If you think of any questions throughout this process, just go ahead and submit the question that way, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. And as Bill said, I'm Leslie Phillips. I'm the transportation planner with the City of Kingsport and the Center Stage project manager. So welcome to tonight's virtual town hall. We're going to talk about how we got here. So Center Stage is a partnership between the City of Kingsport and the Tennessee Department of Transportation. Earlier this year, the city applied for and was awarded an urban transportation planning grant by TDOT. This is a new grant that TDOT has started, and this is the first year for that grant. 10 of those grants were awarded this year across the state. The purpose of the Urban Transportation Planning Grant Program is to provide cities in Tennessee with planning resources to achieve community transportation and land use visions and future economic growth. The city is one of only a handful of communities that received this grant in 2021. As I mentioned, there were 10 awarded across the state. The city will use these resources provided by the grant to create a plan and vision for the future of East Center Street. And again, this is looking at the section between East Sullivan and Fort Henry Drive. This grant will help us look at ways to enhance travel for all users. So that could be, pedestrians, bicycles, cars, buses, any kind of transportation, and create an environment for retail, service, and residential uses to thrive. And just another reminder, that Q&A button is at the bottom of your screen. If you don't see it, just move your mouse around a little bit and it should pop up with a menu, and click on the Q&A button, submit any questions, and we'll get to those in just a little bit. So where are we going? So we'll dig a little deeper and talk about what will be included in this plan. Center Stage has several important objectives, all based on feedback the City of Kingsport has received from residents and business owners, and also from our own observations. The planning team did come in mid-July, and we got out. They met with some city staff, and then also on Friday morning, we got out and walked the corridor, and every business that was open when we were out there, we went in and talked to those business owners and employees just to get some feedback. Then that afternoon, we actually met with some other stakeholders along the corridor. And then on Saturday, we set up a booth at the farmers market and got a lot of good feedback that way from people that were just attending the farmers market and walking by and saw our display and stopped to talk. So we've heard a desire to create a better environment for walking and cycling, whether to get to and from businesses and schools, or just to visit friends and neighbors. Specifically, we are aware of the safety and visibility issues associated with people crossing East Center Street. Directly connected to bicycle and pedestrian safety is the safe and efficient movement of motor vehicles both through East Center Street and also to reach businesses located on the corridor. This includes avoiding excessive delays at intersections and ensuring that vehicles stay within the posted speed limit. East Center Street is a primary gateway into downtown Kingsport. So Center Stage will recommend opportunities for landscaping and beautification enhancements that will result in a more visually attractive corridor and create interesting spaces for people to experience East Center Street. And finally, it's our objective that the recommendations of this plan will lay the groundwork for renewed interest in East Center Street as a place to live and open a business. And if we've done a good job on the other objectives, safe and convenient travel for all users, visually attractive and interesting, then this last piece should fall into place more easily. So we'll have one more poll question before we get to a word from our project consultant. And this one should be popping up in just a second. So what are your biggest interests and or concerns about East Center Street? And again, that's the portion between Sullivan and Fort Henry. And you can choose up to 3 of these. So what are your 3 biggest interests or concerns? I'll give you a few seconds to complete that. And they will post the results. It's interesting. Safety and land use and development are tied for the top spot, and then congestion. So once again, don't forget to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit any questions. And now I would like to introduce Kevin Tilbury with Kimley Horn, and that's the planning and engineering firm that's commissioned by TDOT to work with the city of Kingsport on this project. And he'll close by providing more information on how you can get involved and where we're going from here.
Thanks, Leslie. And I'd like to echo both Bill and Leslie and thanking you all for your participation today. Really, the only way this plan is going to work is if we get full participation from all the stakeholders in the public. And tonight's town hall is a big part of that. So we really appreciate your participation. So as Leslie mentioned, we spent some time a few weeks ago walking the corridor and talking to every open business along the corridor, and then we went out to the farmers market, and that's an image you see there on the screen of our time at the farmers market, and really spent a lot of time talking to business owners and just people who use the corridor to get a better understanding of, you know, what would you do to make East Center Street a better place to drive, walk, have a business. And a lot of the things we heard were very similar to the poll results. So heard a lot about safety, people crossing the street, about maybe fixing up some of the land uses on the corridor, congestion, all those sorts of things. So a lot of the same feedback. So we did have some personal conversations one-on-one, but there are still opportunities to get involved. If you want to go to the next slide, Rachel. So right now, the best way, in addition to tonight's virtual town hall, the best way for you to get involved is to go to our project website, and you'll see the address there on the screen, engagekh.com/center stage, and that URL will pop up at the end of tonight's webinar as well, so you can go to that. But there's information on there to learn more about the project. But more importantly, we have an online map. It's the same map that we went out and used at the farmers market, except you can interact with it online. And Rachel, do you have that up? Can you share that screen real quick so we can show people what it looks like?
Yes, let me do that real quick.
So if you go to the website and you click on there we go, and you click on the top of the screen, you'll get to a map. And yep, if you click on the comment map, and that'll bring you right to the comment map. So, you know, if you have comments about driving, about, you know, maybe pedestrian crossing where it's not safe to cross, areas that you see would be good candidates for beautification, all those types of things. And as you can see, your neighbors have already participated on the map. We've had over 100 comments to date. We'd love additional feedback. We're going to take all of this into account when we start to look at different options or solutions for the corridor. So that's a good way for you to get involved. Thanks, Rachel. That was real helpful. And that's always going to be the one-stop shop. There's also a place where you can put in your email address and stay up to date on the project too, which is great. But so that's not the only opportunity to get involved. As Leslie mentioned, we're still sort of on the front end of the project. We kicked the project off last month. If you want to go to the next slide, Rachel, we'll give you a little bit of a timeline. So it's actually, I guess you could say, summer that we started center stage. And really, this is more about the listening part. So we're listening to you. We're looking at what the existing data says, all that sort of stuff. And we're going to continue to do that for the next couple of weeks, and then we're going to shift gears and start to work with the city and Tennessee DOT and other stakeholders to start to look at some proposed ideas or solutions for East Center Street. And so we'll spend a couple of months doing that, and then we'll come back out and we'll meet with you again later on this year. So before the end of the year, hopefully before the holidays start. So before we get in the hustle and bustle of the holidays, we'll come back out. And what we would like to do is have an in-person session. So somewhere maybe along the corridor where you can come out and meet with us in person. Or we'll have another virtual town hall and you can participate that way. And then we'll also put the recommendations on the website as well. So we'll come up with some ideas for making East Center Street, a better place. All the things that Leslie talked about, driving, walking, land use beautification, all those types of things are on the table, and we're going to get your feedback on those. And then based on that feedback, in early 2022, we'll start to develop a final plan that can be implemented by the city and by TDOT and by others to help improve the corridor and make it a better place. So that's our schedule. As I mentioned, we're still at the front end, so we're still more of in a listening mode. So to that end, I would like to welcome my colleagues to join me. We're going to shift gears now and entertain your questions. So in addition to Bill Albright and Leslie Phillips with the city, we've also got Terrence Hill, who is a transportation engineer with Kimley Horn. We have Laura Kelly, who is a transportation planner and engineer with our firm, and then Winston Mitchell, who is an urban planner and landscape architect. And then you've already met Rachel, who is our moderator. So we've covered sort of all the bases in terms of the different areas of interest. So we're here to answer your questions. I'm going to take a brief pause and throw it over to Rachel now and see if we have any questions.
Can I throw something in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Some folks may think that everybody's from out of town, but Winston, I do believe, is from Kingsport. Is that right, Winston?
That is correct. I'm originally from Kingsport. I went to DB.
Okay, so you know a lot about this area.
And
Yes.
sharing all of it with my teammates too. they're getting a crash course.
Yes.
And Kevin, Michael Thompson has joined. If you can promote him to panelist for the Q&A.
Absolutely.
Michael Thompson is the Assistant Public Works Director, and he's also part of the MTPO staff.
Great. And I'll also point out that Rhonda Sawyer with the Tennessee Department of Transportation, their local office there in the Tri-Cities area, is also here as well. So we have representation from TDOT as well. So Rachel, what's our first question?
Yeah, so we have a few questions to start things off. First question is, who is paying for the study?
Is it 5% or 10%, Leslie?
It's 10% City of Kingsport and 90% TDOT.
Awesome.
And this is a state route, by the way. So for those,
So this is part of a new grant program that and Leslie mentioned this at the top of the presentation, called an Urban Transportation Planning Grant. And this is something that Tennessee DOT has created to give cities in Tennessee the resources to kind of rethink and better plan some of the roads. And so Kingsport applied for this grant, and they were one of the first ones to get it. So, and as Bill and Leslie mentioned, 90% of the cost is covered by TDOT and a 10% local match.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. The next question is, will the project recommend changes to land use on East Center Street?
I'll jump in and take that if no one else wants to. So yes and no. So one of the things that, we've heard a lot about is the need to redevelop along the corridor. So to take some of the old and abandoned businesses and make them into something a little bit better. So as part of this study, we are going to explore the potential for redevelopment along the corridor that would go along nicely with some road improvements. So for example, if we decide to make a little bit of a wider sidewalk so you can have cafes, make a better street crossing environment, maybe enhance some of the on-street parking, all those types of things. We will also look at potential changes to land use or what could be possible from a land use perspective. That said, this study does not have the power to actually change the land use. The results of this study would be a recommendation that would then go to the city for potential changes. Some of the ideas that we come up with may already be allowed under the existing land development regulations and land use plan, and some of them may not. And if it's a change, then that's a process that the city would then go through to make the changes that are recommended. But they're not going to happen automatically as a result of this study.
And I'll add, when we were out walking the corridor, a lot of the businesses, especially closer down to the Sullivan Street side, have been in business a long time. So there's a few that when these business owners decide to retire, we don't know what's going to happen with that specific business or building. And, will it just sit vacant? Will there be something else to go in there? So that's something else that they're considering.
And I think where we want to try to do this is to protect properties. There's some really well-built old homes in some blocks that we're not. This is not a land use plan, it's a transportation plan, but we want to really enhance the value and the quality of these homes with the transportation improvements. So it's not like we're trying to do anything harmful as far as land use. It's trying to be beneficial.
Great point.
Great. Thank you all for that. The next question is a two-part question. When will the study recommendations be made public, and will I get a chance to see them before they are finalized?
So to answer that question, yes, we plan on having another virtual town hall to show the recommendations, and then pandemic willing, we'd like to have also an in-person opportunity to show the draft recommendations. And then we will also present the draft recommendations to the city as well. So yes, there will be an opportunity for everyone to weigh in on the draft plan before it's finalized. Most definitely.
Awesome. The next question is, will this project change the number of lanes on East Center Street?
Does anyone want to take that? I'll be happy to, but I want to give other folks the opportunity to answer first.
That would be a traffic engineer's call.
Yes, yeah, as Bill pointed out. So it's certainly on the table. What this study will do is look at ideas or options for the corridor. So we'll test out a few different ideas. And one of them may be, and we don't know yet, so nothing is certain, but it's, one of the things that we could look at would be changing the number of lanes or the way that the lanes operate on East Center Street. That's, definitely a possibility. Other things that we could look at would be making enhancements to be able to cross the road, improving accessibility to businesses. As Bill said earlier, ways to improve the road that would enhance the value of some of the land use and buildings around it. So that could be any number of things, but yes, categorically, laneage is definitely part of it, subject to evaluation by our technical team. So our transportation planners and traffic engineers.
Yeah, Kevin, I was going to add to that real quick. I mean, we collected traffic counts, traffic volumes for the vehicles, and we've also recently collected some pedestrian counts. So that's also a consideration into our final recommendation. So we're still kind of at the planning stages. That's something that's definitely, if we plan on introducing that idea, that's something that will be in the draft plan that we would recommend and have on the table for any kind of comment. I definitely know that there was a road diet along the, western portion of this route. And there may have been, different opinions on if that should carry on through. And so that's something we definitely want to hear from residents and citizens, getting their feedback on that.
Thanks, Terrence.
And I also want to add, there's a traffic count location that TDOT does on this corridor. And the city's also going to be collecting additional counts at probably 3 locations along the corridor. And I did notice when I drove down through there the other day, there was a count tube, and I think it's probably the TDOT one, maybe for this year, because last year's was done like the first week of August. So I'm thinking that may be the TDOT count tube that was out. So we may have 21 numbers from TDOT whenever they get them posted. And then we'll have additionally the city's traffic counts.
Great. Laura, do you remember, not to put you on the spot, but do you remember how many cars per day that the TDOT location counted? It was about 16, 17,000, is that right?
That sounds right. I have up the software. I can go to that location if you give me a minute. We can move on to it and come back
That
to it.
sounds about right. Yeah, you got about the same amount on the western end.
So right now there's a location, it's between Fort Henry and Wilcox on Center Street where TDOT measures traffic every year. And the most recent, I guess they're collecting 2021 right now, but last year it came in at, if I want to say about 16 or 17,000.
Kevin, last year the ADT was 16,031.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And I think that was a little lower.
By 19 or 20,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in 2019 it was 21,000. In 2018 it was 17,000. So we're back below that
That
number.
was 2020.
Yeah, the 2020 number is low due to the effects of the
COVID, yeah.
pandemic for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Another question, I guess this probably goes along with what we were saying before, but will bike lanes be removed or will bike lanes be added?
I'll start with that one and let Kevin finish up. But again, I think it's going to depend on all the input and the data, what we get. We heard such a variety of opinions in talking to different people. Some people, said the bike lanes don't get used. There were some people that said, please don't take the bike lanes out. I use them all the time. So there's just a variety of opinions on needing the bike lanes or not.
And the bike lanes that we have now, where the 3-lane section is really sort of a byproduct of the original intent, was to make the traffic move in a safer manner by not having so many rear end collisions. When you have that dedicated left turn lane, it really gets traffic out of the way that's trying to turn, particularly left, and it it prevents those rear end collisions. That was I think that was one of the main reasons, not that it was the only reason, but one of the main reasons to do the road dot. And it also moves traffic better when you don't have the left turner sitting there forever at a light trying to turn and then blocking traffic behind them. So there was a couple reasons for that. Then you had the extra space that was converted into a bike lane.
Thanks, guys. I don't have anything to add. I think you all answered it very well.
Thank you, guys. Next question is, after the study is completed and there is a final plan, what's next? What are next steps?
I'll start. I think Leslie and Bill will probably also have some of their observations too. So there are a number of different paths that it could go down. Some of the recommendations may go to TDOT. So the next time that the road is, let's say, scheduled to be resurfaced, we may include some projects that can be done there. Some of it may go to the city. So if we have maybe some sidewalk ideas that they may want to pursue as part of their capital improvement, programming and budgeting process. And then I mentioned earlier, we could suggest some ideas for land use as well and development. And the cities, that would fall under the purview of the city's planning department, which would then take those recommendations into consideration for updating their future land use and ultimately their zoning ordinance. I don't know, Leslie or Bill, if you guys have anything to add.
Yeah, I
I
think
think-
the results of this is a starting off point for the city to decide,
I think
what's
Ken,
a good idea, what looks good, what do we think we want to do, or what may work well along that corridor.
Ken Weems. Was he gonna say something?
No,
Yeah,
he
he-
said he's still trying to get his bearings. And remember, everybody, you can still put questions in the Q&A box as we're answering the questions. You can still add to the Q&A box.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ken,
please
Ken, if
do.
you got something, go ahead. You can add it, like Leslie said. Ken's the planning director, just logged in.
Okay, now I got my screen there. Someone made me a panelist. Now I can see the Zoom like I normally do. My camera's starting to fail on this computer here, so I'm going to leave it black screen. But yeah, so sorry I'm late here. I had to wrap up my planning commission this evening, but luckily it let me out in enough time to get here, hopefully for a good chunk of this. Were there any what were the land use issues that were brought up, if any, from the citizen comments?
So there was, Ken, there was a question if this study had the power to change land use on the corridor on East Center Street.
Okay, yeah, well, we definitely want to see what the final recommendations are. There's lots of opportunities, I think, but that they'll really only open up when we get some landowners that are, hopefully we can put a few parcels together, in a different area. And I think that the outcome of this, ultimately the outcome of this plan will lend itself greatly to being able to justify different uses along through there. I think it'd be a great shot in the arm in general if we get a good portion at least of a block to redevelop in some of the areas where it's needed. And absolutely, there's nothing better when you're proposing any kind of land use change or an amendment to land use, and you have a plan backing you, as far as the traffic goes. There's gosh, an established plan that you've adopted. You can't beat that.
Great. Thanks for that additional insight.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we hear in the transportation world for years and years about land use and transportation together. And this is a good opportunity to do that. I mean, if one works off the other.
Yes, that's true. Do we have any other questions, Rachel?
We just have one more right now. So if there are any other questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. But the last question we've got right now is, does the study look at other locations in Kingsport besides East Center Street?
I mean, I could jump in on that one. I would say this project is specifically just for East Center Street. I mean, we do look at the surrounding context specifically for how this corridor connects to some of the surrounding areas, but this project specifically is just for this portion of East Center Street.
Great.
And I can add, just to fill a little time, since we don't have any more questions at this point. So if anybody thinks of anything, go ahead and put it in there. This study came about because the city manager actually a couple of years ago had mentioned wanting to do a study along this corridor because it is a gateway to downtown. So then TDOT announced they were doing this urban transportation planning grant and thought it was a perfect opportunity. So we went ahead and put together the application, and the MPO helped the city with the application. City submitted it and was awarded it, as we said earlier. And again, if anybody's just joining us, it is 90% TDOT funded and 10% City of Kingsport. But it actually came about, from a conversation a couple of years ago that the city manager had mentioned to the public works director and assistant public works director, he'd like to look at what can be done along that corridor. So this grant was just the perfect opportunity to get that done.
We can do corridor studies a lot of different places. I mean, to answer sort of the question is, even though this doesn't deal with any other corridors, we can, and we have in the past done some studies. Eastone Drive redevelopment corridor study years ago, which looked at all the entraceways, more at 30,000 foot level, but other entraceways into the city. So yes, we can do other corridor studies.
We have to get this one done first, right? So I have a question for the group. What are some things that you've heard, through walking the corridor and at the farmers market and interviewing stakeholders? What are some of the things that you've heard repeatedly sort of pop up as being issues or things to look at on East Center Street?
I mean, I can go ahead and jump in. I mean, I know one of the things that was brought up was definitely a desire for some aesthetic improvements. Just all the planters that were put in downtown and some of the other elements that went in, there seems to be a desire for some of those elements to be extended down Center Street, at least for the first portion of the corridor where all the businesses are. That was definitely something that stood out.
Yep.
There were several comments about the dips in the driveway coming from the street into the parking lots. There being a big dip into those there, and this was at multiple places along the corridor, because we heard it from the Fort Henry Drive end, and we also heard it from the Sullivan Street end.
Yeah, and this was brought up earlier, but the road diet was something we heard quite a bit from business owners and residents at the farmers market alike, which just emphasizes how, I guess, divisive it can be with residents.
We heard a lot about pedestrian crossings. So right now there
Yeah.
are long stretches of road that don't have marked or designated crossing locations. And so there's a lot of sort of random crossing on the street. And so is there something that we can do to address that? Is something I think that we heard a lot about.
Mm-hmm.
And I would point out, they showed the website earlier with the comment map where you can get on and leave comments. And if you just want to get on there and read the variety of comments, it's really good. I've read them all. And you can actually, if there's a comment you like or a comment you dislike, you can like it or dislike it, or you can start a conversation. You can actually add to that comment and make your own comment on that comment. Of course, you can add your own comments to the map as well. But if you just want to get on there and see what other people are saying and like or dislike or comment on their comments, you can do that as well.
Yep. Okay, I have one more thing, and again, everyone on the virtual town hall, we'd love to get more questions from you, so feel free to use the Q&A button. But I'll throw one more out. What are some things that you've seen work in other places that you think might be a good idea for East Center Street to think about? I've got some ideas, but I'm going to let other people answer first if anyone else has
I
any
think
thoughts.
Winston or somebody mentioned just aesthetics, just make the corridor a boulevard type aesthetics. We could put more grass and trees in where you have an opportunity, just beautify it. And I think that's, and you've seen that in other cities. If you drive into Morgan, North Carolina, anybody ever been in there, it's really done a fantastic job of making the entranceway into downtown beautiful. So there's a lot of good examples.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bill, because if you're anywhere east of downtown, that's the way that you're going to come into downtown is on East Center Street. And so, how do we make it how can we make that a fitting gateway into the city, into downtown? And landscaping and beautification is certainly a great way to do that. I'll throw one out. So one of the things that you'll notice is that there's a lot of pavement width, and it doesn't really change. I mean, the lane configurations change, things like that, but the actual pavement itself does not change from one end to the other. So one of the things that we can do to make it a little more of an interesting drive and maybe to get cars to slow down is to put some interesting little bumps in the road, not bumps, but some things like bulb outs, change the pavement width, maybe extend the curb a little bit. We can keep that two-way, that center turn lane that Bill mentioned has been really effective in, as a safety, getting turning vehicles out of the through lane. But in places where people aren't turning, we could do things like put landscape islands in there that could be used as a refuge for street crossing and for landscaping and beautification enhancements. So one of the things that we can do is look at ways, and those have worked elsewhere, is look at ways to make that work on East Center Street as well. And then even on the roadside environment, maybe, think of ways to extend the curb a little bit to create an opportunity for a cafe or just, a place for someone to congregate, to go, to visit some of the businesses along the corridor.
And there was a wide variety of sidewalk widths down through there too. So I think more uniform sidewalks, and I think some of the sidewalks weren't in the best shape, but there was some fairly new sidewalks closer to Sullivan Street. And I know the city has also been working on a lot of the ADA ramps at the corner of the curbs. So a lot of that work has been going on as well, but there was a wide variety of sidewalk widths down through there.
Yep.
And kind of continuing on that, pedestrian crossings, I think we can use, there's a number of different, tools that we could use, from a pedestrian hybrid beacon, which is kind of close to a signal, as well as maybe some rectangular rapid flash beacons. So when people, are ready to cross, they press a button, they light up very bright, kind of warning drivers that someone's, potentially going to be in the road at that point. But also just more signage, just warning individuals that people are crossing at various stages along this corridor.
And I think, sort of related to that, one of the other things that a lot of cities around the country are starting to do, and we heard a little bit of this in comments from some people, is just, one of the critiques of the bike lanes is that, they don't go enough places. Well, really what can change that is filling in some of the gaps. So even outside of this corridor and future projects, connecting some of those lanes to other bike lanes, things like the green belt that are already in Kingsport, the new access lane, or the new pedestrian access along Wilcox. We heard that might be a little outside the scope of this specific projects, but in terms of connectivity, just connecting things together, that's something that a lot of communities are really starting to look at as well.
Good stuff.
Awesome.
So it looks like we have a couple more questions that have popped up.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I know some people have just joined. So if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A box. And also, this is being recorded. So if you joined late, it will be posted on the project website that you're seeing on the screen right now. And then also the city's YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch the whole presentation.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you, guys. So one question that popped up along the lines of potential improvements to East Center Street. Kevin, you mentioned there was a fair amount of pavement out there. Can a potential option be adding more green spaces along the corridor?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, yes, so I think that gets at what we were referring to earlier is there are ways that we can introduce pockets of green space in the corridor without disrupting the travel lanes. When we were looking at some of the strengths and challenges of East Center Street, and we think one of the opportunities is that there's a lot of pavement there, and that gives us the ability to maybe do some interesting things without disrupting the main travel lanes. And so one of the things that we could explore is adding green space to things like bulb outs, so extending the curb a little bit out into the road where there may be some on-street parking right now. or building in some medians to add some nice greenscape and landscaping in the middle of the street to kind of break up the visual monotony of the road and provide some nice looking vistas and things like that. So yes, that is something that we will explore as part of the project. Yes. And then it looks like we've got another question. So there is, I think everyone is probably aware that there is a transient population that frequents the corridor, and so we have a question: is there a way that we can address that? And so that's something that we'll that we'll attempt to address as part of the study are ways to accommodate that population, but ensure the safe functioning of the corridor too. So that is something that we'll explore. We've talked to some of the services along the corridor that people are accessing to get a better understanding of how they use those services and why they're there. So that's something that we'll definitely look at as part of the study.
Thank you, Kevin. There are no other questions at this point. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. But other than that, we don't have any other questions.
Okay. Well, I don't have any more questions on my end. So first I'd like to thank everyone for attending tonight, and I hope that you learned a little bit more and it was helpful for you. Leslie or Bill, do you have anything more to add before we go?
Thank you, Teresa, for joining in. Teresa Clarkson.
Oh, okay. And Teresa, you're with the Federal Highway Administration, is that right? So we have a representative from Federal Highway Administration too. So Teresa, thank you for joining us.
Yes, and thanks to all the others that have joined us as well. I think it's been some good conversation. And as I said, please go put your comments on the map if you haven't already, or see what's been said and see what you agree with or disagree with. Michael or Ken, do you all have anything to add?
No, I don't, not a whole lot really to add to this. It's been very comprehensive, and we've looked at, all the, main items that, main things that can be done to streets to, help facilitate the built environment. Ultimately, I've discussed this a little bit with, some city leadership. I do think this plan would be a good accompanying document to a zoning study in the future. We can take the results of this and the concerns of the citizens, and I think it would definitely be a great supplement to a zoning study in the future as we, try to guide some of the land uses in the area.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's all I have right now.
And I really don't have anything to add, Leslie. I think it was a good job.
Thanks, Michael. All right, well, folks, have a great evening. Go to the website and participate on the map, and be on the lookout for draft recommendations in the next couple of months, and we'll do this again when that's ready. And also, we'll post a recording of this meeting on the city's YouTube channel and on the project website next week.